Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be talking about the 2014 horror drama, Tusk. Alright, so before we jump anything into detail about this movie and how just off the chain it is, let me go out on a note and saying that this movie is actually pretty watchable for being what it is. And I say that because this movie spawned a gigantic uproar of negative reviews whenever it first came out in 2014. Now, this movie is directed by Kevin Smith, who is very well known for the View Askew universe, Jay and Silent Bob, Mallrats, Clerks, movies of that nature. Sometime in the mid-2010 era, he put a poll up on Twitter asking if people wanted to see him direct a horror movie about a walrus. Pretty much everybody said yes, except for one person who said he'd love to see it, but, had some skeptical views about it. So that's what spawned this movie, was a Twitter post that he created that a lot of fans wanted to see him do. And in reception to that, the movie is currently sitting at a 46% on Rotten Tomatoes, and it has a 4.5 out of 10 on IMDb. Kevin Smith himself has even gone out on a limb to say that this is the only movie that has truly bombed for A24. But I feel like that is hella opinionated, like most movie critics are, but it's super opinionated toward the rest of the A24 universe because there's a lot of weird shit, especially in this day and age, that A24 has made. Let me go a great detail further at showing you two movies, one of which being here, one of which being here. Did we not remember the Beau is Afraid movie from 2023 starring Joaquin Phoenix, and the random movie Men about the psychological input of every man being the same? Now, for both of these movies I just mentioned, I will not go into great detail. Instead, I will show you two random images here and here about what these movies are mainly about. And that is my debate on this being the most bombed movie of A24. I think for this being what it is, for Tusk being what it is, it's a very mid-tier movie, but it's a very watchable movie. I don't think I'd go out on a limb and say I'd watch it over and over and over again. I watched it once, might watch it a second time sometime later on down my life cycle. Now, with all that being said, let's jump right into this movie review. In a quick synopsis, this movie is about two podcasters, one of which being Justin Long, one of which being Haley Joel Osment. Justin Long plays a cocky podcaster, Wallace Brighton, who ventures to Canada to interview an eccentric old man, Howard Ho. But he only gets there because the person he goes up there to originally interview is a small kid who went viral on the internet for accidentally chopping off his own leg, who commits suicide before Justin Long's character gets up there. What starts as a peculiar encounter takes a horrifying turn as Howard reveals his dark obsession with a walrus named Mr. Tusk. Let's stop there for a moment. Let me just tell you, I am a huge fan of Justin Long. I think that this man is a fantastic actor. I've loved him in nearly everything that he has ever done. I love that he can switch from comedy to horror to drama on the fly, and that everything he does makes him out to be like this either cocky, arrogant asshole, this sarcastic, witty comedian, or this just batshit, out of left field, crazy, horrifying person. And that follows suit right into this movie, because he does pretty much all three of those things in the movie Tusk. But let's jump out of the talk about Justin Long and let's get back into the actual review of the movie. And this movie is very, very predictable. You will predict pretty much everything that's going to happen in this movie from start to finish. But I say that because it gives off very human centipede kind of movie vibes. As the conversation between Wallace and Howard continue, Howard begins to talk about old war stories and things that he talked about with Ernest Hemingway, quotes that he helped him establish, things that would naturally not come up in a different conversation of type. And originally, Justin Long's character went up there to get information on this kid, so he pivots left field after he finds out what happens to the kid, ends up in this sinister mansion of Howard Ho. The two begin to talk, and then one thing leads to another. You'll guess what happens next. While Wallace is out using the restroom, it seems to be that Howard has slipped something into the tea that he's drinking. Justin Long's character even goes out on a limb saying it's the best tea he's ever drank, and he typically does not like tea. And come mid-conversation, Wallace collapses face down to the ground. Cue Howard's laughter. Wallace then awakes a few hours later in a wheelchair with his leg cut off at the knee to be welcomed by Howard, telling him that he was bit by a spider, a brown recluse. And of course, Justin Long character freaks out. He has no idea what's going on. He feels like he's been drugged. He's missing his leg. He feels like everything that he's gone up to Canada for at this point has completely come off the hinges. Wallace plays along for a little while until he can get to his phone, where he tries to call his then girlfriend and his best friend, played by Haley Joel Osment, whose name is Teddy. Hey. But then we cut scene to the fact that there is pretty much a flashback that Justin Long character's girlfriend and him were having a debate about him going to Canada. She didn't want him to go, and he pretty much tells her that he has changed in human form and he doesn't want to be the old person that he used to be as she wants him to be, and goes to Canada anyway. So as he's trying to call her, we find out that his girlfriend and his best friend are having a secret love affair. The two do not answer his cries for help, but instead wake up the next morning to voicemails of the sinister plan that is about to unfold. At this point, Howard then tells Wallace what his sinister plan is, and is to transform him into a human walrus hybrid that he remembers from his days of war. We then cut scene again to Wallace's girlfriend and his best friend then trying to get to Canada because they now believe that Wallace is in great danger and he may be fearing for his life. As the two are searching, they try to go back to every location he'd been at. They even try to go to the cops. The cops kind of blow him off. Then they run into a private eye detective who is none other than Johnny fucking Depp. Now, this role was originally made for Quentin Tarantino, who turned down the role, but then Johnny Depp picked up the role, but it's been said that it might be his worst portrayed role of all time. I honestly think he does a pretty solid job with the stuff that he is given in this movie for the character he's supposed to play. He plays a kind of batshit crazy, drunken ex-detective who's trying to find out the sinister plot point of Howard Ho. As the three continue to venture on, they're going from place to place at where Wallace had been whenever he first arrived at Canada, and they stumble across a convenience store of which he stopped to get a drink because he loves big gulps and things of that nature. So he goes to this convenience store, and the three run into two very promising up-and-coming stars, Harley Quinn Smith and Lily Rose Depp, which, if you haven't guessed by the last names at this point, are the daughter of A, Kevin Smith, and B, Johnny Depp. The two girls then tell the location to the detective of where Wallace was going because he mentioned it while he was on the phone in the convenience store of where he needed to be at and asked them for directions. And from that point, the three head out to try and find the horrifying manner of which these sinister plans are taking place. But right before all this happens, we get our first look at Justin Long as the walrus character he's portraying. And the reveal is pretty fucking fantastic. You can tell for sure that this walrus suit is fake. It looks fake. It looks like fake dead skin and silicone. It just doesn't come off right, but it is one of those things you can just respect because it's definitely a practical effect. The fact that Justin Long went into this suit over and over again just is incredible. And it really hits home with the fact that it's a very promising homage to like 80s horror. So then Johnny Depp, Wallace's girlfriend, and Wallace's best friend then arrive at the manor. They go inside to find out what's going on, to see if they can hear Wallace, find Wallace, and they hear distant screams coming from the nearby crawl space. So they end up there, and they're trying to figure out what's going on. They walk in to Wallace basically killing Howard Ho with his tusk. Johnny Depp pretty much aims his shotgun at the walrus at this point, and his girlfriend yells out, "No, don't do it." And they don't do it. It cuts scene, and we get the most just random ending you will ever think of. So instead of taking said human to the hospital to figure out if he's okay, if they can help him, maybe get him, put back together out of walrus form, the three take him to an abandoned zoo and have him live in a walrus outkeep, where his girlfriend and best friend visit him on the weekly to bring him fish. And I know what you're thinking. Everything I just said's like, what the fuck? And you'd be absolutely correct, but it's a what the fuck that kind of works. With that being said, I think that this movie, like I said in the beginning of this video, is very watchable. I would give it a solid 3 out of 5 stars, and you could probably go back and watch it again later on down the road. It's not one of those movies that you're going to want to watch over and over again, but it is one of those movies that you want to watch just so you have the experience of seeing it. I think that Justin Long in this movie is just absolutely fantastic. I think he makes the movie just like he does in everything else he's usually in that has to do with horror. I also believe that Johnny Depp's character in this movie kind of hits home for me as well. He plays his character to the point of which he's supposed to play it, even though that character doesn't necessarily make a lot of sense. But he does play the character very well. A couple negatives for me is just like the story itself is kind of all over the place. Though it does make sense, it is one of those movies that you're kind of like, what in the actual fuck is going on right now? Lastly, I think for this being said that it is A24's most bombed movie is a complete understatement. It is ratings-wise, but for me, on an opinionated scale, I would put Beau is Afraid below this. And I know that that's kind of going out on a limb to say, but Beau is Afraid is 3 hours long, and it absolutely makes about the same amount of sense as this movie. So for this being Kevin Smith's one and maybe only shot at horror, I say he did pretty fucking solid. So I definitely recommend you should go check out Tusk. It's a very watchable movie if you're into like Human Centipede kind of B-budget movies. If you're not into that, you should probably steer away from this movie. Alright guys, that'll do it for this one for me. I appreciate everything you guys do. I do some random skits here on the channel. Go check them out. I just finished recording my latest one called If Ghostface Called Me. I'll link that in the description below. Also check out my TikTok. I do some different stuff on there that I don't put up on the YouTube channel. I'd very much appreciate it. And remember to like, share, and subscribe. Check under your beds, and stay safe out there.